Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
The late afternoon sun cast long, dramatic shadows across the terrace of the Metro Court Hotel, gilding the skyline of Port Charles in a deceptive, peaceful glow. Below, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm of clandestine deals, simmering vendettas, and fragile hopes, all oblivious to the seismic shift about to occur high above. Here, amidst potted ferns and the soft clink of glassware, Willow Tate Corinthos felt a contented sigh escape her lips. She reached across the small, wrought-iron table and took her fiancé's hand, her engagement ring catching the light, a perfect, brilliant promise. "It's so beautiful up here," she murmured, her gaze soft. "Sometimes, in the middle of all the chaos, it's easy to forget that there's still so much peace to be found." Drew Kane squeezed her hand in return, a practiced, loving smile gracing his lips. But it didn't quite reach his eyes. For months, those eyes, which Willow had believed held nothing but unwavering honesty and devotion, had been hiding a cavernous secret. A secret that was now a festering wound on his soul, threatening to poison the very foundation of the future they were building. "We make our own peace, Willow," he said, his voice even, a carefully controlled instrument. "You and me, and the kids. That's all that matters." It was the kind of thing Drew said often these days, reassuring, anchoring statements that reinforced their little family unit as a fortress against the world. And Willow, who had fought so hard for her happiness, who had weathered illness, betrayal, and loss, had clung to those words like a lifeline. She believed in their love, in the man she thought Drew was, a hero, a protector, a man of integrity who had emerged from his own darkness with his honor intact. What she didn't know was that the darkness had never left. It had simply shapeshifted, burrowing deep inside him, disguised in the respectable clothing of a business executive and a doting fiancé. "I was thinking," Willow began, her voice bright with excitement, "for the wedding, maybe we could have the ceremony in the gardens at Windmere? It's so beautiful there, and it feels significant. A new beginning in a place with so much history." Drew's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Windmere? That's a strong choice. Are you sure you want all that history looming over our new beginning?" "It's our history, Drew. Yours, mine. It's part of our story. We're not erasing the past, we're building on it." She tilted her head, a faint crease of concern appearing between her brows. "You've been so cautious lately. About the wedding plans, about everything. Is something wrong?" This was his moment. The perfect, sun-drenched opportunity to come clean, to unburden himself, to throw himself on the mercy of the love they shared. The words trembled on his lips, a confession poised to break free. "Willow, there's something I have to tell you. About what happened with Clyde. About the man I became." But fear, cold, cloying, and absolute, clamped his jaw shut. He saw the absolute trust in her eyes, the unshakable faith that was the bedrock of their relationship. To shatter that would be to destroy everything. He couldn't bear to see the love in her eyes replaced with horror and disgust. "Nothing's wrong," he said, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I just want everything to be perfect for you. You deserve perfect." He was so focused on maintaining his own facade, on wrestling his own demons back into their cage, that he failed to notice the subtle shift in Willow's demeanor. She didn't pull her hand away, but the effortless ease of her posture stiffened just a fraction. She had spent a lifetime learning to read people as a survival mechanism, first in a repressive cult and then navigating the treacherous waters of Port Charles high society. She sensed the evasion, the slight discordant note in his reassuring symphony. "I don't need perfect, Drew," she said softly, her gaze searching his. "I just need you. The real you. All of you. The real him." If only she knew. The real him was a man who had made a deal with the devil, not in a moment of desperate passion, but with cold, calculated precision. The secret had a name, Operation Chimera. In the wake of his brutal confrontation with the drug lord Clyde Weston, Drew hadn't emerged the victorious hero the public believed him to be. He had been broken, both physically and spiritually. The rage and helplessness he felt festered, morphing into a cold, obsessive need for a victory that was not just tactical, but absolute. He wanted to annihilate Clyde's entire empire, to salt the earth so nothing like him could ever grow again. It was during this vulnerable, dark period that the offer came, not from a known ally, but from a shadowy government intermediary representing an agency so clandestine it existed only in whispers and black budget reports. They knew about his military background, his time as a Navy SEAL. They knew about his unique resilience. And they had a proposition. They would give him everything he needed to destroy Clyde Weston: unlimited, untraceable resources, advanced cyber surveillance tools, a team of off-the-books operatives. In return, Drew would become their asset. He would use his public persona as a cover to execute their agenda, which involved the destabilization of certain international economic rivals through corporate sabotage, information warfare, and, in the most sanitized terms, aggressive acquisitions. The project was codenamed Chimera, a monstrous fire-breathing hybrid of lion, goat, and serpent from Greek mythology. It was an apt name. The operation was a grotesque fusion of Drew's legitimate business, Quartermain Enterprises, and the government's covert, often illegal, aims. He had become the lion, the goat, and the serpent all at once. He had told himself it was for the greater good. That by taking down Clyde, he was protecting his family, protecting Port Charles. He told himself he could control it, that he could walk the razor's edge and step off unscathed once the mission was complete. But Clyde was gone now, and the operation hadn't ended. The shadowy handlers had their hooks in too deep. Drew was in too deep. He had authorized acts that would be considered treasonous. He had manipulated stock prices, engineered hostile takeovers of foreign companies to steal their technology, and funneled billions in Quartermain capital into shell companies that funded black site operations. He had compromised the ethical core of the company his family had built, all while standing at the helm, smiling for the cameras as the respectable CEO. The weight of it was crushing him. He saw the consequences in small, terrifying ways. A brilliant researcher in Stockholm, whose life's work he had effectively stolen, had taken his own life. A small, family-owned factory in Taiwan that had been a collateral casualty of one of his corporate raids had shut down, putting hundreds out of work. He was no longer just a soldier in a war, he was a predator in a global economic jungle, and the blood on his hands was invisible but real. He kept a separate, encrypted phone for his communications with his handler, a man he knew only as Janice. It was on this phone, later that evening after their terrorist drinks, that the message came through. It was not a request. It was a command. Target, OreHealth Technologies. Basel, Switzerland. Initiate Phase 3, hostile acquisition. Leverage their CEO's personal financial troubles. Make it messy. Assets are prepositioned. Report when complete. OreHealth was a pioneer in affordable pediatric cancer drugs. Their CEO, a man named Dr. Emil Haas, was a widower who had poured his life and soul into the company after losing his own daughter to leukemia. Leveraging his personal financial troubles meant destroying the man's reputation, exposing a private tragedy to humiliate him into submission, and ultimately seizing control of a company that was doing genuine good in the world. Drew stared at the message, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. This wasn't fighting monsters. This was becoming one. He couldn't do it. Not this. His fingers trembled as he typed a reply. Janice, OreHealth is a humanitarian organization. The target is clean. Request reassignment. The response was instantaneous and icy. You are not in a position to request. You are in a position to obey. Chimera does not differentiate between targets. Execute the order. Or would you prefer we have a conversation with Ms. Tate about the true source of your recent successes? The threat was explicit. It was no longer just about his freedom or his reputation. It was about Willow. The following days were a special kind of hell for Drew. He moved through his life like a ghost, performing the motions of being a father, a fiancé, a CEO, while his mind was a million miles away, trapped in a moral prison of his own making. He became short-tempered with Wiley and Amelia. He canceled dinner with Willow, citing a last-minute business emergency, only to spend the night driving aimlessly through the Port Charles outskirts, the ghost of Dr. Emile Haas sitting in the passenger seat. Willow noticed the change, of course. The distance. The shadows in his eyes that grew darker each day. The way he flinched when his phone vibrated. She tried to attribute it to pre-wedding jitters or stress from running a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But her instincts, finely tuned from a lifetime of deception, screamed that it was something more. Her concern led her to the one person she believed might have insight, Michael Corinthos, her former husband and Drew's business partner at ELQ. She found Michael in his office at the hospital, reviewing charts. "Hey," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Got a minute?" "For you?" "Always," Michael said, gesturing for her to come in. "What's up? You look worried." "It's Drew," Willow confessed, sinking into a chair. "I don't know how to explain it, but he's not himself. He's distant, agitated. He jumps at shadows. I asked him if everything was okay with the merger, and he practically bit my head off." Michael frowned, steepling his fingers. "The merger's fine. Better than fine, actually. It's a little miraculous, to be honest." Drew pulled it off with almost supernatural ease. There were half a dozen regulatory hurdles that should have taken months to clear, and he navigated them in weeks. "I just assumed he was that good." "He is good," Willow said, loyalty warring with suspicion. "But nobody's that good. It's like he has a magic wand. And every time something like that happens, he doesn't seem happy or relieved. He seems haunted." Michael's expression grew more serious. "You know, now that you mention it, there have been some things. Unexplained transfers of large sums of capital from QE to these numbered offshore accounts. Drew signed off on them, said it was for international market development. When I asked for more details, he was very vague. Almost defensive." A cold knot tightened in Willow's stomach. "What are you saying, Michael?" "I'm not saying anything," he said carefully. "But if Drew's in some kind of trouble, financial trouble, he doesn't have to handle it alone. We're family. We can help him." Financial trouble. The words hung in the air. It was a plausible, almost comforting explanation compared to the nameless dread beginning to uncoil within Willow. But it didn't feel right. Drew's distress didn't feel like that of a man in debt. It felt like the terror of a man being hunted. The breaking point came from an unexpected direction: Nina Reeves. Nina, ever the schemer, had been nursing her own grievances against Drew for his role in exposing her secret about Willow's parentage. She had been quietly digging into his affairs, hoping to find some dirt, some leverage to use against him. Her efforts had led her to a freelance investigative journalist named Lois Tremaine, who had been following the mysterious collapse of several European tech firms, all of which had one thing in common: they had been in competition with, or were subsequently acquired by, subsidiaries of Quartermain Enterprises. Lois had managed to get her hands on a fragment of data, a corrupted email chain from a server based in the Cayman Islands. It was incomplete, but it contained enough keywords to be alarming: chimera, asset cane, aura health, and leverage package. Nina, seeing a chance to strike, didn't go to Drew. She went to Willow. She cornered her at Kelly's, under the pretense of a chance meeting. "Willow, you look tired," Nina began, her tone dripping with faux concern. "Wedding planning must be so stressful. And with Drew being so busy with his international dealings." Willow, who had little patience for Nina on a good day, sighed. "We're managing, Nina. Thank you for your concern." "Of course," Nina purred. "It's just, a mother worries. I hear his work has taken a rather aggressive turn lately. All these acquisitions. It's the talk of the business world. Some are even calling it predatory." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "I just hope he's being careful. The kind of people you cross in those kinds of high-stakes games, they can be very dangerous. I'd hate for you or the children to get caught in the crossfire." The words were like darts, each one hitting its mark. Predatory. Dangerous. Crossfire. They echoed Michael's concerns and confirmed her own deepest fears. This wasn't about money. This was about something far darker. What are you talking about, Nina? Willow asked, her voice cold. Oh, nothing specific, Nina said with a dismissive wave. Just gossip. But you know what they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's an awful lot of smoke around your fiancé these days. With a final, smug smile, Nina stood and left, leaving Willow with a heart pounding a frantic, terrified rhythm against her ribs. Smoke. It was the final push she needed. She could no longer ignore the evidence piling up around her, Drew's behavior, Michael's observations, and now Nina's venomous insinuations. She had to know the truth. The opportunity presented itself that very night. Drew, exhausted and emotionally shredded, had fallen into a fitful sleep on the couch in his home study. He'd been working late, and the stress of the day had finally overwhelmed him. The dreaded encrypted phone, which he usually kept locked in his wall safe, was lying on his desk, momentarily forgotten, its screen dark. Willow, moving with a silence born of sheer terror, crept into the study. Her eyes fell on the phone. It was a model she'd never seen before, bulky and utilitarian. It didn't look like a personal device. It looked like a tool. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure it would wake him. This was a violation of trust, a crossing of a line from which there was no return. But the alternative, living in this limbo of fear and doubt, was worse. She picked up the phone. It was password protected. She glanced at Drew, his face etched with even in sleep. She thought about the things he cared about, the anchors in his life. Their family. She typed in Wiley's birthday. Nothing. Amelia's. Nothing. Their wedding date. The screen remained locked. Then, with a sinking feeling, she typed in the date her cancer had gone into remission. The date he had called the beginning of their real life. The phone unlocked. The world seemed to slow down, the air turning to syrup in her lungs. The screen displayed a single, open conversation thread with a contact named Janice. With trembling fingers, she began to scroll. It was all there. The entire, horrifying tapestry of his betrayal. The initial messages outlining the deal to take down Clyde Weston. The evolution into Operation Chimera. The cold, clinical commands from Janice. Drew's own responses, sometimes reluctant, but always compliant. The details of the Ore Health acquisition. The mention of the leverage package on Dr. Haas, photos of his daughter's grave, obtained by Drew's operatives, to be used to break the man's spirit. She saw the names of other companies, other lives destroyed. She read the threat against herself. Or would you prefer we have a conversation with Ms. Tate? This wasn't the man she loved. This was a stranger. A corporate mercenary. A man who had sold his soul and was now leveraging the love she thought they shared as a threat point in a negotiation with monsters. The encouraging words he had whispered to her in the dark, the promises of a safe and happy future, were all lies, constructed on a foundation of corruption and global-scale cruelty. The phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. The sound woke Drew. He jolted awake, disoriented for a second, before his eyes focused on Willow's ashen face, and then on the phone at her feet. The blood drained from his own face, leaving him a pale, terrified mask. Willow, he whispered, the word a choked plea. She took a staggering step back, as if his very presence was toxic. The look in her eyes, a devastating cocktail of betrayal, horror, and utter devastation, was worse than any punishment Janice could ever devise. Willow, please, let me explain, he begged, scrambling to his feet. Explain? The word was a shattered, broken thing. Explain what, Drew? Explain how you're not a hero? How you're a chimera? She spat the codename like it was poison. Explain how you've been lying to me every single day? How you looked me in the eye and promised me a future while you were terrorizing a man who lost his child. while you were threatening me? It wasn't a threat against you. It was a threat from them. I was trying to protect you, he cried, his voice cracking with desperation. By becoming this, she screamed, the force of her anguish finally breaking through. You didn't protect me, Drew. You made me an accessory to your nightmare. You made our love a bargaining chip. You looked at everything we built, everything we survived, and you decided it was worth sacrificing for what? Power? Revenge? Tears streamed down her face, hot and furious. All those times you told me we were a team, that we had no secrets, it was all a lie. The most important part of your life, the part that was destroying you, you shut me out of. You let me live in this beautiful, perfect fantasy while you were wading through hell. I had no choice, he roared, his own composure shattering. Clyde would have won. He would have come for us, for the kids. I did what I had to do to keep you safe. Safe? She let out a bitter, hollow laugh that held no humor, only immeasurable pain. Do you feel safe, Drew? Because I have never felt more terrified or more alone in my entire life. The man I trusted with my life, with my children's lives, is a stranger. A monster created in a shadow war. She looked at him, and the love that had once burned so brightly in her eyes was completely extinguished, replaced by a cold, bleak emptiness. You said we made our own peace. But there is no peace built on a foundation of lies and other people's suffering. There is no future here. She began backing away towards the door, her movements jerky, like a marionette with its strings cut. Willow, wait. Please. He moved toward her, his hand outstretched. Don't, she whispered, her voice trembling but final. Don't you dare touch me. She looked at him one last time, her gaze sweeping over the man she thought she knew, memorizing the ghost he had become. It's over, she said, the words simple, absolute, and devastating. It all ends. Now. She turned and walked out of the study, out of his house, and out of his life, leaving Drew Kane alone in the ruins of the perfect world he had destroyed with his own two hands. The baptism of their new beginning had ended not in encouraging words, but in the angry, thunderous silence of a truth too terrible to bear.